Chaim, Belivracha, for blessings, to life and to blessings. Chaim. Good to the last drop. What lights up your life? We all go through sometimes moments or beyond moments, challenges, difficulties. And then just someone smiles at you with a genuine smile, connection, and that lights up your life. It could be your little children, playing with them, grandchildren, that light up your life. It could be the learning we're doing right now that lights up your life. We all have things that are dear to us, that are special to us, that lights up our lives, that gives us a little, a little extra go, like David's coffee. That's a plug for anybody that comes here to Chabad Tzvich and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, that you get David's coffee, you know,
You don't mention
and a live class.
You don't mention who's online anymore. We used to do that a lot. Such and such from Texas, such and such from Romania.
Thank you, David. Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Tzvich Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We're in chapter 35, starting a new section. We started to understand what is the purpose of the Beinoni. The Beinoni struggles throughout their lives. The struggle won't change. The level of struggle changes. Struggle can start here, move here, move here. It's always on a different area, higher, more refined struggle. If you find yourself struggling with the same thing you did a year ago, that's not a great sign. That means the Tanya has not been incorporated in your life in a way that it's changing you from within. What's been being filled up in your cup, you might have a hole on the bottom. If you have a hole on the bottom, whatever you fill up, it's just going straight out. Fix the hole, so then everything will be contained. And we look back and we see that we are struggling, but not in the same place, not in the same level. We're different. We've grown. I'm sure that that's the case. I'm sure that's the case. So the Beinoni is here to struggle. That's what we're here. We're not going to be like the righteous who completed the struggle, and they don't struggle with the animal soul anymore, the desire of the body, because it's gone. It's been transformed, but not us. Especially, we're only BITs, Beinoni in training. So then what is the purpose? That's what we need to understand. With that, we quote from the Zohar. We quote from the Zohar, the Yanuka said, on the verse, it says in Koheles, King Solomon says, that the wise person's eyes are on their head. And Zohar asked, well, everybody's eyes are in their head. What does that mean? It means Your eyes go where your concern is, where your interest is, right? That's where your eyes go. So it's a metaphor to understand. Your interest is to see that on top of your head, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, is always there. That's why a man doesn't go bareheaded, because the divine presence is overhead. So a wise person is always making certain that the Shekhinah, divine presence of God, is always encompassing the individual. How is it going to be encompassed? That light of God. How are you going to light up your life? Well, it's going to be like a candle has a wick. The wick will hold on to the flame. That flame, right, being the light of God. So the wick is the body, right? The flame is around the wick, around the body, the Shekhinah, the divine presence. But what must you give it? Fuel. It needs oil. Don't be shortchange the oil in order that you can have the light of your life. Light up your life. The light of God. Light up your life. And that will be oil, which the metaphor for that is good deeds, mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is the fuel. That is the Zohar. Today we unpack that teachings, the analogy. Again, the light is the Shekhinah, the divine presence, right? That light needs something to hold on to, because a flame needs a wick and needs fuel. If it doesn't have fuel, then what happens? It'll burn out. It'll get smoky. It'll burn out quickly. So you need fuel, right? And you need the wick to hold on to it. Otherwise, the flame will just evaporate. So you need both things, right? So interesting. For the Shekhinah to be present, you need a body. That's the wick is the body of the individual. So we're not negating the body in order that the divine presence should be there. Right? Now the question is about the fuel. The fuel. So the Alter Rebbe negates the notion that that fuel could be your divine soul. Your divine soul, after all, is divine. Why wouldn't that be the fuel to create the light of God? I mean, because the divine soul has a love and awe of God, and if it expresses that love and awe of God, why does that not bring the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God? So the Alter Rebbe explains is because when it's interesting, the fuel, the oil burns perfectly, right? Olive oil. It burns perfectly. It doesn't have a bad smell. It doesn't leave. It doesn't have a smoky. It doesn't have smokiness to it, because it's completely a conduit for the light of God, to create the light of God. Well, the soul, the godly soul, a person would think, well, that's a perfect conduit for the light of God. Yes and no. It is, because it is a godly soul. But when that godly soul is now found in a body of a person, that love and awe of God is not pure anymore. Even the righteous who have a love and awe of God, that love and awe of the divine soul out of itself is not it's not pure. Why? Again, because the soul is found in a body, and therefore it's a mitzias. It's a thing. There's a thing there, right? And that thing, a being, a soul in a body is a being, that itself is not a perfect conduit to create the light of God. Even the divine soul, in and of itself, that means, right? That is expressed through the wick, the body, does not create the perfect light of God, the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God in our lives. It doesn't do it. So the only thing that does do it is a mitzvah. Why? What is it about a mitzvah? Because a mitzvah is the will of God. And God, he and his will are one, right? It is the supernal countenance of God, and it's bound up and totally one with God. It's not a thing. A mitzvah is not a thing. It's godliness itself. It is not a separate entity, but completely nullified. By way of example, second. It's really tomorrow's class is going to bring this out more. So the will is completely nullified to the person, right? It's a perfect unity with God. And therefore, just like the olive oil, when it runs through the wick, right? Meaning through the body. How's a mitzvah done? Through the body of a person. That's the conduit. That's the means. My arm extends to give charity. My ears listen to words of Torah. My mouth says words of prayer. It's all bodily engagement, bodily action that the wick being a conduit for the combustion, for the fuel to create the light, the mitzvah. And the mitzvah is a perfect fuel, the olive oil, because it goes straight, it doesn't, there's no sediment, there's nothing negative, there's no thing there. So therefore it goes through the wick and creates the light. It creates the light. And that's how we create the light of our lives. The light of God, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, through the act of the mitzvah, through the act of God's commandment, God's will that we fulfill. And again, that's why the righteous person can't do that. Because the righteous, not to take anything away from the righteous, of course, but in the end, their soul in their body, they're still a thing. They're still a mitzias, a being. A mitzvah is nothing else but a reflection of the divine will. Right? Just like I desire to pick up the cup. The movement of picking up the cup is nothing but a reflection of what I want. So the act of putting on tefillin the act of putting charity into even just a pushka charity box, the act of saying the words of prayer, and the like, are all an expression of the will of God that's completely nullified and one with God. And therefore, through that act, we create at least, right? Through that act of the mitzvah, through the wick of through the conduit of the body, that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, encompasses us. It's very powerful. Very powerful. Any questions? Do certain mitzvahs fuel you more? Good question. In the end, there's no distinction, actually. A mitzvah is an expression of the divine will. Be it a small mitzvah, a big mitzvah, it's all the will of God. And on that level, there is no distinction. That's how we don't, the consequence of the mitzvah, which is not the light of the mitzvah, right? There's a distinction, right? But not the mitzvah itself that creates the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God. Big or small, before God, it's all the same. This is something bigger, something smaller. Just like in punishment, there's a greater consequence if you, eat chametz on Pesach, eat bread on Pesach, right? Or, not observing the Shabbos. The consequence is greater than if you, I think you,
The word. Prayer.
yeah, you missed a prayer, right? The consequence is greater, but that's consequence. We're not talking about consequence here. We're talking about the essential, you know, uh, essential thing that is done in the mitzvah is creating the light of God.
Oil.
Yeah. Any other questions? Doing mitzvah brings light and fuels. Yes. Lisa has a question. Where is Lisa's question? Oh, that was just dealt with Lisa's question. Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Well, I think that's it. Rambam coming up. Laws of Tshuva, penitence, starting today. Rabbi Ronnie, fine coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We had a wonderful class last night, Torah studies. Whoever didn't get a chance to participate, you can get it on youtube.com/Tanya Rabbi, the Torah studies from last night. And TRC also is wonderful. And we'll continue our conversation in Tanya tomorrow.